In in case you're wondering about the change of background, I am at my mother's home. If it's not obvious by the curtains, and I'm trying to do this here. So, change of scenery. Today, I would like to discuss philanthropy, and I've recently written an op-ed about this that I've just submitted. I don't know if it will be published, but instead of trying to recreate it and talk about philanthropy from my head, I'm just going to read this op-ed, and that should actually make it much clearer and better. So, here we go. This will be, I don't know, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So the title is Why Philanthropy Can Undermine the Shared Prosperity It Hopes to Create. Mackenzie Scott has donated nearly $20 billion to thousands of nonprofits supporting education, food security, housing, youth development, economic justice, healthcare, and climate action. Warren Buffett has similarly pledged to give away 99% of his wealth to similarly worthy causes. I threw in the first similar, I shouldn't have. Their generosity is admirable, and their efforts have unquestionably helped countless people. But there is an economic reality we rarely acknowledge. When very large fortunes are quickly pulled out of productive assets and redirected towards consumption, even for noble aims, we unintentionally weaken the foundation of broader-based prosperity, the productive capacity of the economy itself. Scott's wealth came from her investments in Amazon.com, and Buffett's from hundreds of American companies across virtually every sector. These investments were not idle or hoarded. They were actively financing the buildings, equipment, research, technology, and payrolls that make economic growth possible. In fact, contrary to the popular image of billionaires endlessly buying yachts and vacation homes, the vast majority of their wealth remains invested in businesses. Those businesses don't exist merely to enrich investors. They exist because we all rely on and benefit from the goods, services, and jobs they create. Capital, whether in the form of stocks, bonds, bank loans, venture capital, or even credit cards, pays for the factories, machines, software, and tools that keep society functioning. Phone rang, got interrupted. Looking for where I was. Yeah, it pays workers' wages. It funds scientific breakthroughs. It underwrites the infrastructure behind everything from food to medicine to clean energy. In other words, invested wealth is not sitting unused. It is working, and we all benefit from what it produces. Countries with abundant capital per person, along with strong institutions and freedom of exchange, tend to sustain higher wages because health outcomes and greater opportunity, tend to sustain higher wages, better health outcomes, and greater opportunities for mobility. Countries with limited capital struggle to produce enough, even when people work heroic hours. Productive capacity, more than anything else, defines living standards. Now, imagine if the wealthiest Americans suddenly withdrew their investments and spent the proceeds, however altruistically. Imagine that they spent the money, even though they were being altruistic. I think I had the emphasis in the wrong words. So if the wealthiest Americans withdrew all of their capital from these companies, businesses would lose the capital they rely on, production would cease, wages would evaporate, and prices would skyrocket. While philanthropy does not recreate this on a massive scale, it does recreate it in miniature. When billions of dollars are liquidated from companies and transferred to nonprofits or households to be spent immediately, two things happen. First, businesses lose capital they depend on to expand, innovate, and hire. That weakens future production. Second, once the donated money is spent, it no longer operates as capital. It no longer funds factories, tools, or payrolls. The productive engine it once powered simply stops. Meanwhile, the increased consumption spending of the withdrawn money that now buys the fewer goods and services available causes prices to rise, an impact borne disproportionately by working families. Going to stop and explain that sentence. It was kind of a long one. So when capital is no longer employed, when it's employed, it's giving life to production. It's funding production. If you withdraw that money from production, then you're no longer producing the goods that money was producing, so you have fewer goods, and then you're taking that money and spending it on the goods that have been produced, so you're consuming up the goods that exist, and that additional consumer spending drives up prices. So the act of withdrawing money and spending it reduces the supply of goods and increases prices. That's what that was saying. This does not mean philanthropy is unnecessary. Many people urgently need help today, especially those financing hunger, homelessness, disability, or serious illness. A compassionate society must support them without hesitation. But most charitable dollars in practice do not primarily reach the people who are unable to help themselves. They go to broader groups of low-income households in an effort to supplement consumption. These aims are honorable, yet the most powerful and lasting way to improve life for struggling families is not through additional consumption of existing goods, but through expanding the economy's ability to produce more goods, and thereby lowering prices and raising wages organically. If the economy produced twice as much, the price of goods would fall by half. The need for charity would shrink, both. And those who truly cannot work would be supported by a society far more capable of providing. This raises an important question. Is there a way to align the compassion of philanthropy with the economic benefits of capital investment? One promising idea is for donors to channel their wealth into philanthropic investment trusts that keep the capital invested while directing it towards socially valuable sectors, such as affordable housing, food production, medical research, clean energy, or care infrastructure. The returns generated by these investments could then be distributed to the people who need help most, year after year, without diminishing the productive base that lifts everyone's standards of living. The instinct behind philanthropy is generous and deeply human, but if our goal is shared prosperity, not just today, but for future generations, we must ensure that our gifts do not unintentionally erode the productive capacity that makes progress possible. Sometimes the most meaningful act of generosity is allowing capital to continue doing its quiet, unglamorous work, building the economy that supports us all. Okay, so those are my thoughts on philanthropy, and I believe they're very important. I believe that I know for a fact production is the key to life. It's the key to living standards. It's the key to staying warm, having a bed, staying healthy, having medicines, sanitation equipment, you name it. So we must keep producing. If we withdraw all the capital and give it away, we're not going to have any more goods. And to the extent that we do it a little, we have fewer goods. And it helps the poor, harms the poor more than anyone. So think about that, please. Thanks very much.